Before the fire truck, before the hose, before the alarm, there was just a line of people, a row of buckets, and a building on fire. And for nearly 2,000 years, that was all that stood between a city and total destruction. The Bucket Brigade. It sounds almost too simple to be real, but it was the most sophisticated firefighting system the ancient world ever produced. And the story of how it worked, and why entire cities burned anyway, is stranger than you think. Go back to ancient Rome. At its peak, more than 1 million people lived packed into 5 square miles. Buildings stacked 5 and 6 stories high. Narrow streets so tight, 2 carts could barely pass. And everything built from wood. Fire was not a question of if, it was a question of when. The Romans had no organized answer. When a building caught fire, neighbors shouted. People grabbed whatever containers they had. They formed lines from the nearest well and passed water hand over hand toward the flames. Spontaneous, unplanned, and desperately inefficient. Then came Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the wealthiest men in Roman history. Crassus assembled 500 slaves trained in firefighting. When a fire broke out, he would arrive and wait. While the building burned, he would approach the owner and offer to buy the property for almost nothing. The terrified owner, watching everything turn to ash, would almost always say yes. Only then would Crassus order his slaves to fight the fire. Sometimes the building was already gone. That was fine. He now owned the land. This was not firefighting. This was extortion with a bucket. The Roman writer Plutarch documented this scheme in detail. Crassus used it to accumulate an enormous portion of Rome's real estate. It took Emperor Augustus to create a real fire service. Around 6 AD, Augustus established the vigiles, a corps of freed slaves organized into 7 cohorts, each responsible for 2 of Rome's 14 districts. They patrolled at night with buckets, hand pumps, axes, and poles to pull burning sections away from neighboring buildings. The vigiles were the first professional fire department in recorded history, and even they could not save Rome from burning. In 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome tore through the city for 6 days and 7 nights, destroying 10 of 14 districts. The vigils fought it. They lost. This pattern repeated across the ancient and medieval world. In medieval Europe, towns rang church bells to signal a fire. Every household was required by law to keep a filled bucket hanging by the front door. When the bells rang, you grabbed your bucket and ran. The line would form from the nearest water source, stretching sometimes hundreds of meters toward the fire. Full buckets passed forward. Empty buckets passed back. An endless human chain working against an enemy that moved faster than they did. It was brutal. The heat was immense. The smoke was blinding. And still they passed the buckets. Because if they stopped, their neighbor's house burned. And if their neighbor's house burned, their house was next. The Bucket Brigade worked on something deeper than civic duty. It worked on survival. In a city built of wood, every fire was everyone's fire. The Great Fire of London in 1666 changed everything. It burned for 4 days and destroyed over 13,000 houses. The Bucket Brigades fought it. They lost. Out of that catastrophe came insurance companies who hired private fire brigades and gave insured buildings a metal badge. When fire broke out, the brigade would check for their badge and fight it only if it matched. Competitors' building? They watched it burn. It was Crassus all over again, 2,000 years later. Public fire departments did not appear until the 18th century. Benjamin Franklin helped establish one of the first volunteer fire companies in Philadelphia in 1736. Hand pumps improved. Steam pumpers arrived in the 1800s. The bucket began to disappear, but not entirely. During World War II, when German bombs fell on London, the fires were too numerous for the fire department alone. The government issued millions of pumps to ordinary citizens and organized them into street fire parties. Neighbors, bucket brigades. The same human chain that fought fire in ancient Rome, standing in the rubble of a bombed city, passing water hand to hand. Some problems are so old and so human that no technology fully replaces the answer your ancestors found first. A line of people, a row of buckets, and the understanding that the fire coming for your neighbor is already coming for you. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for weekly history videos.